kind boy visits his elderly neighbor daily, but on the 10th day, he found a note on the door. He didn't know her name when he first moved in. Just the creaking porch, the slow-drawn curtains, and the hollow thud of silence from the house next door. But on the 10th day, everything changed. The first time Noah saw her, she was standing in the window, half-shadowed by gauzy curtains, her hands clasped in front of her like she'd been waiting for something that never came. He was 13, the kind of boy who asked questions adults ignored and held open doors even when no one thanked him. New to the neighborhood, new to the loneliness, and desperate to anchor himself to anything that felt real. That old house felt real. It looked like it had once been loved. White paint now chipped and tired, porch swing rusted at the hinges, flower beds overtaken by weeds that hadn't bloomed in years. But beneath all that stillness, Noah felt a heartbeat. On the second day after they moved in, he walked over with a plate of cookies his mom had made to introduce themselves. She was slow to answer the door. Her voice was brittle like leaves. But she accepted the plate and gave him a nod that lingered longer than necessary. That was how it began. By the third day, Noah knocked again. No plate this time, just conversation. By the fifth day, she opened the door before he even reached the top step. By the seventh, he called her Ms. Evelyn. By the 10th, there was a note on the door. He remembered that morning like a photograph burned into his brain. It was the last week of October. A brittle chill had snuck into the air, and the trees were bleeding orange and gold. Noah walked the same path, his sneakers crunching through the leaves that scattered across the sidewalk. But something was off. The porch light was still on, though the sun had already risen. The curtains were drawn tight, and the mailbox, which she checked religiously every morning at 8, was stuffed full with envelopes sticking out like tongues. His stomach turned. He climbed the steps slowly. His fingers brushed the door. That's when he saw it taped at chest height, a yellowed scrap of notebook paper with his name written on it. Noah. Just that. No dear. No greeting. Just his name, and below it, in shaky handwriting. I'm sorry, I can't come to the door anymore. I'm not well. Please don't knock. Thank you for your visits. You made the silence bearable. The paper trembled in his hand. He read it twice, then a third time. He didn't know what not well meant. Not really, but it felt like something final, like a closing door. He stood on the porch for a long time after that. Noah didn't tell anyone about the note. Not right away. His mom was too busy unpacking boxes and working double shifts. His dad had left long before they moved, and his sister was still too young to understand anything except cartoons and peanut butter sandwiches. But he kept thinking about her, about Ms. Evelyn. He missed her laugh, quiet and low like a purr. He missed how she always offered him hard candies no kid liked, but he took anyway. He missed how her stories felt like secrets, and how her eyes lit up when he asked questions about her past. On the 11th day, he didn't visit. On the 12th, he sat on his front steps and watched the house. On the 13th, he made a choice. He started leaving things by her door. A comic book he thought she might like because she once told him she loved reading mysteries. A thermos of soup his mom made. A drawing of a flower, because he remembered her saying she used to garden before her hands got stupid. He didn't knock, just placed the items down gently and left. Sometimes, they disappeared by the next day. Sometimes, they didn't. But that didn't stop him. Noah kept this up for weeks. Fall turned into early winter. The trees went bare. The porch collected frost. Still, he walked over every day like a ritual. His own quiet prayer that she was still behind that door. That maybe she would come back. He thought about knocking anyway. But the note stayed taped to the door, and her handwriting haunted him. You made the silence bearable. On the 32nd day, he heard something. Not much. Just a creak of floorboards. A shift behind the curtain. But it was enough. He smiled for the first time in days. Hi, Ms. Evelyn, he said gently, not raising his voice. I'm still here. No response. But the next morning, the thermos was gone. She never came to the door again. But she started leaving him things too. A tiny crocheted bookmark. A faded photo of a rose garden with a note on the back, mine. 1972. A single peppermint, wrapped in crinkled plastic. They didn't speak. Not out loud. But the silence between them was full. Until the day it wasn't. It had been 50 days since the note. The snow had started falling again, and Noah wore his dad's old jacket because it was warmer and heavier than his own. He crossed the street, humming under his breath, a new book tucked under his arm. The porch light was off. The mailbox overflowed. The peppermint was still where he'd left it, 3 days ago. He climbed the steps and felt the shift in his chest before he even reached the top. The door wasn't locked, and the note was gone. Noah froze. The door, always locked, always sealed with distance and memory, was cracked open by an inch. Just enough to whisper, "Come in," though no voice ever spoke. His breath caught in his throat. He wasn't supposed to enter. He knew that. The note said not to knock, and this felt like trespassing. But something inside him, deeper than guilt and louder than fear, pushed him forward. He stepped across the threshold. The air smelled of cedar and something older, like faded perfume and time. The house was dim. Shadows stretched across the living room, touching worn furniture and framed photographs on the wall. A teacup sat on the side table, half full, untouched. The TV was silent but on, frozen in a paused frame from a black-and-white movie. Noah whispered, "Miss Evelyn?" Nothing. He walked slowly, careful not to make noise. The floorboards groaned beneath his sneakers. There were pictures everywhere. On shelves, on walls, on the mantel. Evelyn as a young woman in a pale blue dress. Evelyn with a man in uniform. Evelyn holding a baby, smiling wide, sunlight in her hair. Each photo told a story she never finished telling. He moved deeper into the house, past the living room, past the hallway where the wallpaper peeled like old skin. He found the bedroom door ajar, just like the front door. She wasn't there, but her bed was made, neatly, carefully, like she knew someone would be looking. And on the pillow sat an envelope with his name on it. Just Noah, again. No last name, no greeting, just like before. He picked it up with trembling fingers and opened it slowly. "Dear Noah, if you're reading this, it means I didn't wake up. Don't be afraid. I wasn't. I've lived a very long life, and I was never alone after you started visiting me. That was a gift you gave me, and I need you to understand something important. You were the first person in a long, long time who saw me. Not as someone frail or forgotten. You saw me as someone worth talking to. You reminded me of my son. He would have been your age once. He died a long time ago, before he ever had the chance to become the man I know he could have been. You carried that same spark, that same curiosity. You brought light into this house again. I know this is a lot for someone your age, but I want you to know every peppermint I left you, every photo, every small thing that was me saying thank you. I called someone, a nurse. She was supposed to check on me every few days. I told her about you. I left her instructions. She'll find me. Don't worry about that. But I didn't want you to be the one to find me. That's why I left the note. That's why I stayed behind the curtain. I didn't want to leave you with that memory. This isn't the end of the story, Noah. This is just the end of mine. But your pages are still blank. Write something beautiful. Love, Ms. Evelyn." Noah sat down on the edge of her bed. He didn't cry at first. He just sat, holding the letter, rereading it until the edges softened beneath his grip. The silence in the house was different now. Not empty, not hollow, just still, like the kind of quiet that follows the last note of a beautiful song. He didn't know how long he stayed there. Long enough for the light outside to shift. Long enough to hear the sound of tires on gravel. He stood and stepped back into the hallway. Through the window, he saw a silver car pull up. A woman stepped out middle-aged, carrying a clipboard, a stethoscope around her neck. The nurse. She knocked once, then saw the open door and entered quickly, worry drawn across her face. She froze when she saw Noah. Their eyes met. "I'm Noah," he said softly. "I was her friend." The nurse's expression changed. Not surprise, just sadness. She seemed to understand more than he expected. "I'm glad she had someone," the nurse said quietly. Then she nodded toward the living room. Would you like to wait outside while I check on things?" Noah shook his head. "She already told me." The nurse looked at him for a long time. Then she gave a small nod. "Okay." They didn't speak much after that. The nurse made phone calls, speaking in low tones, while Noah sat on the porch steps, hands in his lap. It had started to snow again, thin flakes drifting across the porch. He remembered the first time he knocked on her door. He remembered the way she smiled when he asked her about her garden. He remembered the laugh she gave when he said peppermint was a grandma candy. She didn't even argue, just winked and gave him two. By the time the ambulance arrived, Noah had already gone back inside on Cedo to take one thing with him. The photograph of her garden. He didn't know why. It just felt right, like something she would have wanted him to keep. He didn't take anything else. He didn't need to. That night, his mom asked where he'd been. He told her everything. She didn't interrupt, just listened. And when he got to the letter, her hand found his, and she didn't let go. The next day, they brought flowers to the porch. And the day after that, the swing creaked again just once as the wind passed through. The funeral was small. Just a few people. The nurse, a woman from the neighborhood who remembered Evelyn from a church potluck back in the 90s. One of the mail carriers. And Noah. He wore a blue button-up shirt, the same color as her dress in the photo. He brought the photo of the garden and placed it beside her urn. When the pastor asked if anyone wanted to speak, Noah stepped forward. He didn't look at the crowd. He didn't need to. He just looked at the urn and spoke. I didn't know Ms. Evelyn long, just a couple of months. But in that time, she became my favorite part of the day. She taught me things no one else did. About kindness. About history. About how it feels to be remembered. She told me once that silence can be heavier than anything. That it can crush people if no one breaks it. I think that's what I did. I broke it. Just by knocking. He paused. Took a breath. And she broke mine too. When he sat down, no one clapped. It wasn't that kind of moment. But someone cried. And someone else whispered amen. And Noah didn't feel alone. Not anymore. That spring, something strange happened. The weeds in Evelyn's garden started to die. Not all at once. Just a few, here and there. Then more. By summer, Noah had pulled them all. He planted tulips first. Then daisies. Then marigolds. Not because he knew what he was doing. But because she had once said, flowers always return. Even when you think they won't. And she was right. One afternoon in July, Noah sat by the garden, now full of color. He opened his sketchbook and drew the house. The porch. The swing. The flowers. He added a little note at the bottom of the page. You made the silence bearable. It had been almost a year. A year since the snow. Since the note. Since the empty porch across the street stopped feeling like a wound and started feeling like something sacred. Noah had grown. Taller. Quieter. Older in a way no one could see but him. Every Saturday morning, he came back to the garden. It became a routine no longer about grief, but about tending to something living. He pulled weeds, replanted bulbs, watered the beds, and watched as the seasons changed again. This time, he didn't dread the cold. He knew now that spring would always return. Some days, he brought his sister, Emma, who liked to pick the yellow daisies and name them. Evelyn would have liked that. Other days, he came alone, sketchbook under his arm, and sat in the shade of the porch to draw. He'd filled nearly 3 of them by summer's end pages of plants and people and old memories turned into color. But one day in late August, he drew something different. Not the garden, not the house. He drew a letter, folded, addressed to someone he hadn't thought about in a long time. That night, after dinner, Noah sat at the kitchen table and stared at a blank page. His mom was folding laundry in the living room, humming to herself, the way she always did when she was calm. Mom, he asked, his voice careful. She looked up. Yeah, honey. Do you know how to find someone if you only know their name? She raised an eyebrow. Who are you trying to find? Noah hesitated. Ms. Evelyn had a son. She told me he died. But I don't think that's the whole story. His mom set the towel down. Sweetheart, what makes you say that? She wrote it in the letter. The one she left me. Said he would have been my age once. That doesn't sound like he died as a baby or a kid. It sounded like he left. Silence. Then, you want to find him? I think he deserves to know about her. Even if he walked away. His mom was quiet for a long time. Then she nodded. Okay, she said. Let's try. It took 3 weeks. A few internet searches. One very kind librarian. And an old church record with a name Thomas Elbridge Caraway Evelyn's son. He was listed as living in Vermont. Not far, but not close either. No phone number. No email. Just a P.O. box. It was enough. Noah wrote a letter. Dear Mr. Caraway, I hope this isn't too strange. My name is Noah Whitman. I'm 13, and I used to live next to your mother. I think she wanted to find you. I think she didn't know how. She passed away last winter. But before she did, we talked a lot. She told me stories. About her garden. About her son. She never said your name. But she said he was curious. That he used to build things out of matchsticks. That he asked too many questions. I'm kind of like that. She said he would have been around my age once. That he could have become something good. I think she missed you. I think she forgave you, too, if that matters. She left me a letter. She said I reminded her of you, that I helped her feel seen again, and I think that's what she needed. I just thought you should know. The house is still here. The garden is blooming again, and every Saturday, I pull weeds and water the tulips. She'd like that, I think. If you ever want to see it, or talk about her, or just sit on the porch swing, you'd be welcome. Sincerely, Noah. He mailed it without telling his mom. He didn't know if it would reach him. Didn't know if the man would even read it, or throw it away. But sending it felt like planting something. Like hope. September came. The leaves began to turn again. Noah started 8th grade and stopped waiting. Until one Saturday morning, the doorbell rang. His mom answered. Noah was rinsing his hands in the sink, dirt still under his nails from the morning's gardening. He heard her voice rise, slightly polite but cautious. Then she called out, Noah, there's someone here to see you. He dried his hands and stepped into the hallway. There was a man standing in the doorway. Tall, lean, salt and pepper hair beneath a worn cap, deep-lined face, hands that looked like they once worked with wood or wires. A small envelope in his grip. Noah didn't need to ask who he was. He knew. Mr. Carraway, he asked. The man gave a small nod. His voice was rough. Just Tom. They stood there for a moment, neither moving. Then Noah stepped forward and extended his hand. Tom looked at it, then took it. I got your letter, Tom said, voice low. Wasn't sure I'd come, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. Noah nodded. She kept your photo? It was in the hallway. Tom's mouth twitched. I didn't know she still had it. She never stopped loving you. Tom looked away. I know, he said quietly, but I didn't believe it until now. They went to the garden together. Tom knelt beside the tulips, touched the soil, and closed his eyes for a long time. He didn't speak. Noah didn't ask him to. But when he opened his eyes again, they were red. She planted these when I was 5, Tom said. I used to pull them out by the roots and hide them under the porch. Drove her crazy. Noah smiled. She still loved them. Tom laughed softly. Of course she did. They sat on the porch swing for nearly an hour. Tom told stories about his childhood, about running away at 16, about joining the Navy and never looking back. I didn't leave because I hated her, he said, voice barely audible. I left because I hated myself. Couldn't live with the person I was becoming. Thought maybe I'd spare her the disappointment. Noah didn't answer. Just listened. That was enough. Before Tom left, he handed Noah the envelope. Inside was a photograph of Evelyn, holding a newborn baby, sitting in that very garden, flowers in full bloom behind her. Her smile wide. Alive. She never sent this to me, Tom said. I think she was waiting for the right time. Noah looked at the picture, then back at him. I'm glad you came. Tom nodded. So am I. That fall, Tom returned twice. Then again for Christmas. By spring, he was visiting every weekend, helping Noah rebuild the shed in the backyard and teaching him how to use real tools instead of just sketching them. He never moved back into the house, but he restored it, bit by bit. Scrubbed the windows, repaired the fence, painted the porch. Noah helped. They planted more flowers, filled the yard with life. And on the 1-year anniversary of Evelyn's passing, they held a small gathering in the garden. Neighbors came. The nurse came. So did the mail carrier, the librarian, and a few faces Noah had never met. Each brought something: a story, a memory, a photograph. And Noah read the letter Evelyn had left him, out loud. When he finished, no one clapped. But Tom put his hand on Noah's shoulder and whispered, she would have been proud of you. By the time Noah turned 14, the garden had become a landmark. People in town started calling it Evelyn's garden. Not out of habit, but out of respect. They left small tokens on the porch-painted stones, folded paper cranes, even a journal where visitors could write memories. Some had never met her. Some only knew the story through whispers or through Noah himself. But all of them came with reverence. Something rare in a world so fast. Something sacred. Noah still came every Saturday. Not out of grief anymore, but out of love. Sometimes he brought books and read on the swing. Sometimes he sketched new flowers or wrote letters to no one. But always without fail watered the garden. And always without fail left one peppermint candy on the porch railing. Just in case. By summer, Tom had offered to teach Noah how to build furniture. They started with a small table. Nothing fancy, just 4 legs and a flat top. But Noah poured everything into it. Measured twice. Sanded every edge. Chosa would stain the color of Evelyn's hair in her old photos. When it was done, they placed it beside the porch swing. Tom carved her initials into the edge. EC. It wasn't a headstone. It was better. That August, something unexpected happened. A letter arrived at Noah's home, addressed to Noah Whitman, guardian of Evelyn's garden. It was from the town council. Inside was an invitation to speak at a local event honoring residents who had made a meaningful contribution to the community. Noah stared at the envelope for a long time, then looked up at his mom. "I don't know what to say." She smiled. "You already do." The day of the event, Noah wore the same blue button-up shirt from Evelyn's funeral. It didn't quite fit anymore, but he wore it anyway. He stepped up to the podium, the crowd small but warm. He didn't read a speech. He just told a story. She lived across the street. That's how most great stories start, I think. Quietly, with someone living near us that we don't really see until we finally do. I didn't know Ms. Evelyn. Not at first. Just that she lived alone, and the neighborhood kids said she was scary. She wasn't. She was kind, and funny, and brave in a way no one gave her credit for. I visited her for 10 days. He paused, smiled. But those 10 days changed the way I look at the world. She taught me that being seen is a kind of salvation. That people don't fade away because they're old, they fade away because we stop looking. She didn't want pity. She wanted conversation. Memory. Something to pass on. And I think we can all do that for someone. Not just the old. Anyone who feels invisible. She gave me something I'll never forget. And I just hope I gave her the same. There was silence after he finished. Then, slowly, the crowd stood. Not clapping. Just rising. Out of respect. That night, Noah sat in the garden under the stars. Tom joined him, carrying 2 mugs of cocoa, even though it was warm outside. "I've been thinking," Tom said, settling into the swing, "about turning this place into something official." "A memorial?" Noah asked. Tom shook his head. "More like a story garden. With benches. Maybe a plaque. A place where people can come and write. Share. Remember. Not just Evelyn but anyone." Noah nodded. "I like that." Tom sipped his cocoa, watching the wind move through the marigolds. "You ever think about why she chose you?" Noah looked down. "I think. Maybe I knocked at the right time." Tom smiled. "No, I think you were the right time." The next spring, the garden opened to the public. Not as a park. Not as a museum. Just as it always had been, a place to sit. To remember. To breathe. Kids came after school to draw on the sidewalk in chalk. Elderly neighbors brought clippings from their own gardens to share. Strangers left letters in a small wooden box Tom built by hand. And every Saturday, Noah returned. Older now. Calmer. But never too old to remember. One Saturday in May, a little girl approached him. She was maybe 7. Hair in 2 uneven braids. Holding a notebook pressed tightly to her chest. "Are you the boy from the story?" she asked. Noah blinked. "What story?" She pointed to the plaque beside the porch. It read, "In memory of Evelyn Caraway, a woman who listened, and the boy who knocked." "I guess I am," Noah said. She sat beside him on the grass. "My grandma says you helped her." "Who's your grandma?" "Mrs. Adler. She lives down the street." Noah smiled. "She used to be quiet." The girl nodded. "Not anymore. She talks a lot now. She told me stories about when she was my age." "That's good," Noah said. The girl opened her notebook. "I'm writing mine down, just in case someone forgets." Noah looked at her, really looked. She reminded him of himself. He reached into his pocket and handed her a peppermint. She blinked, surprised. "Is this for me?" He nodded. Stories taste sweeter with one of those. That night, Noah sat by the window of his own home. The street was quiet. The porch across the way was empty, but the swing moved slightly in the breeze. And he felt something. Not sadness. Not loss, but a kind of peace. Like Evelyn's voice in the garden. Like a memory that never really leaves. Years passed. Noah grew older. Moved away for college. But he never really left. Every time he returned, the first place he stopped was the garden. It was different now. Bigger. Brighter. More names on the plaques. More photos hung in weatherproof frames. But the peppermint on the porch never changed. Neither did the swing. One spring, he brought someone new. Her name was Lydia. They sat beneath the shade of the porch while he told her everything. Not just about Evelyn, but about the note, the silence, the garden. "What made you knock?" she asked. Noah looked around, then at her. I think. Because I didn't want her to feel like I once did. Lonely? No, he said softly. Invisible. Later that summer, he asked Lydia to marry him. She said yes. They got married in the garden, surrounded by flowers Evelyn once planted and seeds Noah had added. Tom walked Noah down the aisle. Emma read from the Journal of Memories. And beneath the arch of sunflowers, he whispered a thank you to the wind, just in case she was still listening. They had a son 2 years later. Named him Eli. When he turned 5, he asked about the photograph hanging above the mantel, the one of a woman in a pale blue dress standing in a garden. That, Noah told him, lifting him into his lap, is Ms. Evelyn. Is she your grandma? No, Noah said, smiling. But she made me who I am. Is she in heaven? I think so. Eli leaned in close. Can I talk to her? Noah looked at his son curious, kind, bursting with questions. Just like he once was. Yeah, he said. But first, we should go water her flowers. They walked across the street hand in hand. The garden was full, not just with blooms, but with people and stories, and a silence that no longer felt empty. It felt full. It felt home. The last winter Evelyn spent alone arrived without mercy. It came early, dragging its gray skies and bone-deep cold through every window frame and hallway. The wind howled like memory, and the walls of her old house creaked like they were trying to speak. But there was no one left to listen. No one but her. In the garden. She had once filled the house with laughter. When Tom was little, she'd play music from the radio, jazz, and Ella Fitzgerald, mostly. He would dance barefoot in the kitchen while she cooked, pretending the wooden spoon was a microphone. He had a wide grin, 2 front teeth missing, and a mind that spun faster than hers could catch. He built things. Matchstick bridges. Paper airplanes that flew halfway down the block. He once turned the entire dining room into a model train city for 2 straight weeks. Evelyn never told him to stop. She didn't believe in silencing magic. But then came the years no one talks about. The in-between years. When joy becomes quieter. When children grow sharp and sullen. When the world knocks louder than a mother's voice ever could. Tom left at 16. No note. No goodbye. Just an open drawer, a missing coat, and the sound of an engine fading. Evelyn searched for him. Called police stations, visited train depots, mailed letters to old friends, and burned through a month's rent trying to track him. But it was like chasing smoke. She sat on the porch every day for months, peppermint candies in her palm, watching the road, praying the wind would bring him back. It never did. 25 years later, a package arrived. No return address. Inside was a book of poetry. Pages worn, the spine broken. No note. But on the inside cover, scribbled in familiar handwriting. Mom, you once told me words were anchors. I needed one. She wept for 2 hours, then placed it gently on her nightstand. She read from it every night until her eyes gave out. Now, in this last winter, Evelyn sat by her kitchen window, a mug of tea in her hands, the steam rising like ghosts. She knew she didn't have many days left. The body knows. Even when the mind tries to argue. Her hands ached too often. Her breath came shorter. Her dreams were full of voices. But more than anything, it was the silence that told her the truth. The kind of silence that doesn't wait to be broken. She began writing letters. Not to anyone in particular. Just to remember. One for Tom. One for her husband Gerald. One for her old neighbor who used to bring her cinnamon bread on Thursdays. She kept them all in a shoebox beneath her bed. Unsent. Because words mattered, but timing mattered more. And she didn't know if she'd ever find the right one. Then the boy knocked. Noah. Barely 12. All elbows and questions and light in his eyes. He didn't flinch at her voice. Didn't squirm at the silence. He simply came in. And stayed. For 10 days, she felt her bones forget their age. She laughed. Told stories. Watched him explore her old photo albums like they were treasure maps. Each evening after he left, she sat at the desk and added another page to a new letter. This one was different. This one wasn't just memory. It was a map. Dear Thomas. He came today. The boy. I don't know his last name. Doesn't matter. What matters is that he knocked. And I opened. And for 10 days, I have remembered who I am. Not a ghost. Not a name behind curtains. Not just a woman who forgot where she left her favorite gloves. A mother. A wife. A girl who once danced barefoot in the rain. You would have liked him, I think. He asks questions like you did. Doesn't settle for quiet. Looks at things like they're puzzles he's determined to solve. He reminds me of the boy you were before the world got sharp. I don't blame you, Tom. I never did. I blamed myself. For the words I didn't say. For trying to protect you instead of preparing you. For being silent when I should have told you the truth. That pain doesn't make you broken. And distance doesn't make you lost. And that coming home doesn't mean you've failed. If you ever read this, know that I loved you every day. Even the ones I spent alone. Especially those. On the 10th day, she folded the letter. Slipped it into an envelope with his name. But she didn't mail it. Not yet. She wasn't done. She wrote one more. To Noah. Dear Noah. You think I'm wise. I can see it in the way you ask me things. But the truth is, I've lived a long life learning from the same mistake thinking time is guaranteed. It isn't. Time is borrowed. And kindness is how we pay it back. You paid it forward. With your knock. With your visits. With your questions. You made an old woman feel seen again. I didn't expect you. And that's what made you a miracle. There will be days when you feel small. Powerless. Like your voice doesn't matter. On those days, I hope you remember this. One knock changed everything. So knock bravely. Always. That night, Evelyn placed both letters on the table. She wrapped herself in her oldest quilt, the one Gerald gave her in their first winter together. And she watched the snow fall. Not with sadness, but with peace. The kind that only comes from having said what needed saying. Even if no one hears it yet. 3 days later, she was gone. But the letters stayed. Waiting. One for the son who ran. One for the boy who stayed. Years later, after the garden had bloomed again and the world had moved forward, Noah found the shoebox while helping clean the attic. He opened it with reverence. Read every word with quiet awe. And tucked the letter to Tom into his pocket. Just in case he ever came. But the one to him never showed anyone. He didn't need to. It was already written into everything he did. Every knock he made. Every silence he sat through. Every garden he grew. And sometimes, when he walked alone in the garden under the stars, he would whisper the last words Evelyn ever wrote him. Over and over. Like a prayer. Like a promise. So knock bravely. Always.